Welcome everybody. Today we were asked for some concept art that was about a vehicle station placed under the road level. We started by opening Blender and creating a plane in which we placed another plane smaller that will help us to identify the height of an average man. We then started to model the plane, the main plane, by creating a valley. This valley, in my thought, will be the place where the vehicle move around. We then started to arrange the plane so we can extend our scene to our will. We built the main shape of the station by creating the ceiling. I thought that would be a good idea to make some light passing through the ceiling by creating a hole. We'll see them later modified, but it's not a problem right now. We worked on the wall and built some holes to make it more interesting. Now I'm placing the stairs. This will be the location of the stairs, and here they are. I used an array modifier to modify one step. The idea would be that people will come from the road upstairs and slowly go down to these stairs till the floor in the bottom. Now I'm joining the stairs with the other object in order to have them also in the array. It's important to adjust and move your camera while you are doing such things in order to have a precise view of what you are going to create. I then enable some add-on in order to create a truss. This truss will help me to quickly modeling some pillars for this scene. I initially wanted to be on the ceiling, but then I decided to make a concrete beam on the ceiling and place the beam with the metallic structure on the floor in order to support the concrete beam. The add-on we used to create such beam, I think, is contained in the ArchiPack add-on. I then decided to split the ceiling in some parts in order to make more light coming through. Okay, the scene is more or less constructed. It's time now to twist a little bit our model in order to give to break the shape of the corridor. I was struggling a little bit with the modifier and the orientation, but at the end I was able to make the ceiling curve on the x-axis. That is the way our corridor go through. Now that we have modified our geometry, we can start by finding the right location of our camera in order to not to have a background, first ground and a middle ground. We close one of the other hole in order to make the light not passing through, because we want to have a strong light coming from the ceiling. We then switched to cycle in order to have a more precise representation of the light. I add an area light at the bottom of the corridor, which has a strong power, a big power, and increase them a lot in order to have a strong light at the end. I then placed another area light that will fill our shadows from behind the camera, and then a sunlight that comes very strongly from the top through the ceiling and makes these stripes on the floor. For each light, I set the color with the black body node, as we can lately see. We then started by tweaking the materials of the scene. We simply want two kinds of material. One for the concrete, which has some roughness and some bump mapping, and and another material for the metallic part, like the truss, and some parts of the floor, the binaries. I then started to tweaking the geometry to make more light passing through in the section with the stairs. For the metallic material of the truss, I used a noise texture to tweak the roughness, to drive the roughness of the material without using a texture. Oh, it's only procedural here. I assign the metallic material to the parts of the scene that were intended to have this feature. And then, after some thought, I added a bevel modifier with an angle limit method in order to work only on the surfaces that were angular. After assigning the material, I decided to make the plane in the middle, at the bottom of the scene, more smooth, with less roughness. So I used duplicate the material and added a math node to multiply the input from the noise texture to something lower than 0.1. I set up the scene for the final rendering by adding a lot of other passes that will help us in the compositing state, and they are also useful to control the amount of noise that we have in the scene, and to tweak the parameters in order to have them together. Here's the scene while it's completing its rendering phase. As you can see, we have a background that it's quite interesting at the bottom of the scene, that is placed on the first in the right part of the image. I then open the compositing tab in order to use the noising feature. I forgot to save the normal pass, but that's not a big issue at the moment. So we saved our smoothed image. We then added a glare node with the two different settings, and saved both images in order to use them in the compositing phase. We'll see them later, because I like to composite my image in an external software, like for example Adobe Photoshop. I have a plugin that enable the opening of EXR images. After I imported everything into Photoshop, I started by masking my first glare node output in order to create a misty effect on the point where the light reached the floor. I then started to overlay some images to break the simplicity of my surfaces. For example, this dotted texture help us to make the surface more interesting. I then switched to 16-bit images, and then finally worked on the surface, as you can see, with overlays. I divide my layers in render, which are the parts of the image that comes from Blender, and the overlays which are all the parts that comes built in Photoshop. As you can see, I place some texture. These are all the things that can also be done with UV mapping in Blender, but as I have not decided yet which style would be in my scene, I prefer to make them in Photoshop, as long as they don't take too much time to be built. Here they are. I love this texture because it gives some dirty effect on one side. I added some vignetting and adjusted the curves to paint the light around. It was time now to create some volumetric effects with a layer of light with some smooth brush. As you can see, I placed them near the stairs, so the light that comes from above will be more visible. I added some more texture to create some interesting pattern on the ground to break the plainness of my texture, and the same things on the ceiling, where I wanted a granular feeling to be placed on. Some other volumetric lights effects for the ceiling. I started by painting blue in order to see, but then switched to white light in order to make them coming from the outside as the scene. I worked then on the surface of the ground in the valley that is placed on the middle and on the right side of the image. We'll then place our people in order to make more interesting the image and guide the viewer from one side of the image to the other. So after placing these grates that will pump up the water in the scene and adding some lights here and there, I then looked for some people and then remember that I have my own collection, so there was no need to use some cutout found on the web. I personally use the site Skullgubber a lot. They have lots of people in various weathery conditions. This was not making the cut. This nice girl with the red hat was perfect for my scene. I'll paint some shadow. The shadow was not aligned correctly, so I paint another part of the shadow and smooth it out. Okay, that is working fine. A little bit of less saturation for the image. And for the final touches, I like to place some photos and use them to alter or the light or the texture in order to break the simplicity and to pump up some aspects of the image that I like the most with the tones. For example, this image of the sky was used on the ceiling to build this interesting pattern. It's not aligned, it's not perfect, but is suggesting that something is going on. Some images are not right, so I discard them, but some are, and I keep them. Perfect. The image was finished. Thank you for your attention. See you next time.